The sunlight spilled through the wide glass windows of Harper's diner, casting long golden stripes across the worn checkered floor. It was one of those small-town American diners that felt frozen in time. Red vinyl booths, the smell of coffee hanging in the air, and a jukebox in the corner that had long since gone silent. But that morning, there was no peace. The quiet hum of conversation and clinking of coffee cups were shattered when three men stormed in, loud and rough. Their presence heavy enough to make the other customers shrink back into their seats. The center of it all was Emma, a young waitress barely in her 20s, her apron tied tightly around her waist, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She had been working double shifts for weeks, barely making enough to pay for her mother's medication and rent. She was used to rudeness, used to customers who barked demands. But what she wasn't used to was the cruelty that unfolded that morning. The thugs singled her out, mocking her, grabbing at her tray and laughing when she stumbled, trying to balance hot coffee and plates. They whispered insults loud enough for everyone to hear, reducing her to an object of their entertainment while the room sat frozen, helpless. This wasn't just harassment. It was humiliation that Emma's eyes welled with tears, but she forced herself to keep moving, her trembling hands carrying plates she prayed she wouldn't drop. In that moment, the weight of her life pressed down heavier than ever. The exhaustion, the endless bills, the loneliness, and now the public shame. She felt invisible, except when people wanted to hurt her. Just when Emma thought she couldn't bear another second, the soft chime of the diner's front door broke the tension. The bell jingled as a group of bikers walked in, their leather jackets heavy with patches, the unmistakable skull and wings emblem of the Hells Angels on their backs. The air seemed to shift instantly. Conversation stopped, forks froze midair, and the thugs who had been laughing so confidently suddenly fell silent, their bravado cracking. To the front was Diego, a towering figure with gray streaks in his beard, eyes sharp but not unkind. His presence was commanding, the kind that made people instinctively straighten in their seats. The rest of the club followed, their boots heavy on the floor, their movements calm but deliberate. They weren't shouting. They weren't causing trouble. They simply walked in as though they belonged there. But in that silence, everyone knew something had shifted. Diego's gaze landed on Emma. She was standing near the counter, her shoulders slumped, her cheeks red from embarrassment. He could see the tears she was fighting back, the way her hands clutched the order pad like it was the only thing keeping her upright. His eyes narrowed, then flicked over to the table of thugs who were suddenly very interested in their menus. Without a word, Diego and two others took a booth near the back, their presence alone radiating enough quiet strength to make the room breathe easier. But the thugs weren't finished. One of them, a lanky man with tattoos crawling up his arms, muttered something cruel under his breath as Emma walked by. When she set down their drinks, he intentionally knocked his glass over, the colas spilling across the table and dripping to the floor. Emma's heart sank. She bent down to clean the mess, her humiliation complete, when suddenly a heavy hand landed on the thug's shoulder. Diego stood over him, his shadow swallowing the table whole. His voice was low, steady, and cold. He didn't raise it. He didn't need to. She's working hard. You don't treat people like that here. The diner went silent. Every eye was on the scene. Every breath held. The thug tried to laugh it off, but Diego didn't move, his hands still gripping the man's shoulder like a vice. The weight of the Hells Angels filled the room, not with violence, but with authority, with the kind of unspoken rule that everyone understood. The other bikers had risen too, their expressions unreadable, but their presence making it clear Emma was not alone anymore. The thugs stammered, their arrogance drained. They left money crumpled on the table and hurried out, their footsteps quick against the floor. The moment the door shut behind them, the diner exhaled. The quiet murmur of voices returned, but it wasn't the same. Something sacred had just happened. Emma stood frozen, her rag still in her hand, her body trembling. She looked at Diego, who simply nodded once before sitting back down. He didn't want thanks, didn't need recognition. But in Emma's chest, something broke open, a flood of relief, of gratitude, of the reminder that maybe the world still had people willing to stand up for someone like her. The rest of the shift passed in a blur. The bikers stayed, ordering breakfast, joking among themselves, but never once making Emma feel uncomfortable. When it came time for them to leave, Diego slid a thick tip across the counter, more than Emma made in 2 shifts combined. She tried to refuse, shaking her head, but he only looked at her with a steady kindness. "Take care of your mom," he said softly before walking out with the others. Emma stood there long AF. Till they'd gone, the sunlight spilling across the empty booths, her hands clutching the folded bills. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen, not as a waitress, not as someone struggling to keep her life together, but as a person who mattered. That day became a turning point. Word of what happened spread through town, not as a tale of violence, but as a story of respect, of a group of unlikely protectors who stepped in when kindness was needed most. And for Emma, it wasn't just about that one shift. It was about believing again, believing that no matter how cruel the world can be, there will always be people willing to stand up for what's right. And so the sun continued to shine through Harper's diner. The coffee still brewed. The plates still clattered. But for Emma, the world felt lighter, warmer. Because in her darkest moment, kindness walked through the door wearing leather and steel, and it reminded her that she was never truly alone.